Hey everybody, I'm Ebony. This is Ebonee's Creativity. Thank you so much for joining me here on my channel. In today's video, I am taking a piece of furniture that I found on the trash pile and I brought it home, cleaned it up. It was previously painted, but I stripped it all down and I gave it a whitewash and it looks absolutely beautiful. So if you are interested in seeing me flip this piece of furniture, just keep right on watching. So as I said before, I found this dresser out on the trash as I was walking my dogs down the street one day, and the lady who was getting rid of it was sitting outside, and she told me she was getting rid of it because of these oil stains on the top. She had started to refinish this piece herself, and something about it just drew me into it. I really liked the way that it looked. I loved the size of it, and I had a client that was looking for something really spacious to use in her bedroom. Then I opened up the drawer to check for bugs, of course, and saw that it was a Kincaid. And I opened up this area here in the middle, and everything in it was absolutely pristine, beautiful, and clean. So I knew that I had to bring this piece home with me. I was not exactly sure how to remove oil stains, but when I saw that all the handles were present, everything looked good. She had pretty much finished this piece, she said, and then she wasted oil on it, and she was just over it at that point. So a lot of the things that I normally worry about when I find furniture on the street were not present here, and I was very happy about that, and she helped me load it. So my first order of business before I decided to do anything else was to try to get rid of these oil stains. And Google University told me that Fuller's Earth powder is what I should use, so I ordered this off Amazon and went to town with it. I've never tried this. I never even knew it was possible to remove oil from wood, but I wanted to try it. So I just saturated the area with this Fuller's Earth powder and let it sit. Up next, I moved on to removing all of the hardware. So as you can see in the imprint left behind by the hardware, there is no primer. That's just paint on top of wood. So what I wanted to do was go ahead and sand all of this paint off, and I was kind of glad that this flipper did not use a primer because that made this much easier just to sand it all off. Typically, I kind of cringe when I see flippers who don't use primer because I think if you're going to sell somebody something, you want to give the paint the best chance of adhering. But in this case, since I'm removing it all, I was very glad. And I don't think I mentioned this before, but I am using 220 grit sandpaper just to sand all this paint off. Pretty sure that the orbital sander is not the best tool to do this part, but I'm using it anyway because I don't have a sander that fits curved profiles like the Surf Prep does. So I just want to make sure that I'm never flattening out the edges of any of my drawer fronts or changing the profile in any way. So I'm just trying to get as much off as I can with this larger sander before I have to start using my other sanding methods. Here's how far I got with the orbital sander. You can still see some white around the edges, but I'm going to try another method to remove that next. The next method I tried was this carbide scraper, which as you can see, it worked relatively well, but I'm just not comfortable with this tool yet, and so I did end up having to go in and hand sand the rest of the drawer fronts. Up next, I am removing the doors, and you guessed it, I am going to go right into sanding those to try to remove the paint from those next. I took those outside and started to sand those with the 220 grit sandpaper as well, and I'm going to have to come back to those later to get the recessed area on the front of them. I got most of the paint off the doors, and then I went ahead back to this Fuller's Earth powder and these oil stains. When I put this on, my intention was only to leave it for 1 hour, but just to keep it honest, this is 3 days later, and I'm going in with an electric toothbrush to really grind the powder in, and then I'm going to wipe everything away with a microfiber cloth. And this is what the stains looked like after the first application. So I thought that this turned out pretty well, and I was very shocked, and I decided to do another round of this. After the second round of powder, literally none of the oil stains remained, so I was extremely excited. Hope you learned something new because I sure did while doing this flip. So now I'm just doing a final sanding just to make sure all the powder residue is gone and everything is nice and smoothed out on the top. So after I got the top squared away, I just moved on and focused on removing as much paint as possible as I could with the orbital sander. Like I said, I'm not that comfortable with the carbide scraper, and I don't have anything that can get into contours, so I knew whatever I could not remove with this orbital sander, I would be hand sanding for the most part. And as you can see, I was able to get quite a bit off, just really the trim pieces I wasn't able to fit my orbital sander into. So I did order this kit off Amazon that has tools to help you get into tight areas with hand sanding. And after my arthritis kicked in and said hell no, I went ahead and started to move on to a liquid stripper to try to get these bigger trim pieces at the bottom. So that's what I'm doing now. I have some liquid stripper and steel wool, and I'm trying to remove as much as I can this way now. To be honest, I strongly dislike liquid stripper, but in this case, it was my best bet because my hands were not going to allow me to do all the hand sanding that I needed to do to get into these tight areas and recessed areas and trim pieces and so on. You'll rarely see me using liquid strippers on my channel, and that's just because I think they cause you to do more work than just sanding whatever you're trying to remove. So I typically go for sanding, but in this case, like I said, I don't have any other tool that I feel comfortable using to do this, so I'm just rubbing this in and I'm going to let it sit. While that sits, we're going to move on to hardware, and I really hate when people just use chalk paint and go over everything, the hardware and everything. That just really grinds my gears because I find that to be a lazy way of doing furniture. But I digress. I soaked these in vinegar and scrubbed them with steel wool, and you can see how beautifully they turned out. Here's one of the pulls from the door. When I cleaned it up, I noticed that it said K602 or K607. Does anybody know what that means? Leave me a comment if you know. My client requested black hardware, so even though I won't be reusing most of the hardware that came on here, like none of the handles, I will be reusing the pieces that went to the doors. So I went ahead and used some metal primer on those to get those prepped for paint. While I waited for that to dry, I went back to my paint stripper that I put in the recessed area on the doors and started to scrub that with steel wool. After spending about 2 hours to completely remove all this paint from both doors, I went in with a scrubby pad that is saturated with mineral spirits to go ahead and clean up all the stripper residue. While I wait for those doors to completely dry, I'm going to go ahead and start to make my paint wash. I have a tester here of Fusion Paint and Algonquin. And since you do not need much paint at all to do a paint wash technique, I'm just going to refill this with water 4 times and stir it up really well. And that will provide me enough paint to complete all of the drawers. And that is doing 2 coats on each drawer. So I used 1 sample size of paint to do the drawers and 1 sample size of paint to do the full body, and that was all the paint that I needed. You want to make sure that your mixture is very runny and watered down. You can see how easily this is dripping off my brush. That's how you want it to be. And even though this wash is much more watery than any paint I would typically use, I'm still going to apply it in the same way, just doing straight strokes and trying to follow the grain of the wood. Once I'm done applying my wash, I want to wipe it off with a damp microfiber towel, and I'm trying to make sure that I'm wiping it off evenly across the top, which can be kind of hard when you're doing it with your bare hand. But I'm just going to keep on wiping until my coverage is as even as possible. Just in case it's kind of hard to pick up the color differences on later clips, the top is untouched and the bottom is paint washed. So I just repeated the process of brushing it on and then wiping it back as evenly as possible, and here's how the drawers looked once all of them were completed. At this point, I'm finished with my steel wool and my liquid stripper on the bottom trim. Now I'm just going in with my sander and some more 220 grit sandpaper to give that a final smoothing. At this point, I am thanking God because all my sanding is complete, and now I am going to be able to move on to cleaning everything up. So I'm starting out with my yard blower just to get all the sanding dust off the surface, and then I'll move it in to give it a wipe down. Now it's time for that wipe down, so I have my microfiber cloth and I have some Dawn and warm water in my bucket, and I'm just using that to wipe this off. So next I mixed up another batch of my paint wash, and I used the same materials, same recipe, same everything, exactly like I did with the front of the drawers, and I'm using long straight strokes to get this done, but I'm doing it section by section. So I started up painting on the trim on the bottom here, and I'm wiping that off. I'm not moving on to painting another section first. I'm wiping it back as I complete each section. And this is just some more footage of me doing more of the same, just using long straight strokes to apply the wash across the top and wiping it back. Here is how the top turned out after my paint wash, and as you can see, there is absolutely no trace of any oil stains. Here is the top coat that I'm going to be using, and I just poured some on a plate, and I am applying it using a slightly dampened Dollar Tree sponge. And my buddies in the background are here to help us out, so leave a comment if they are the cutest dogs ever. If you are a returning subscriber, you may feel like there is an elephant in the room, and that is the fact that I have not posted on this channel in over a year. Thank you so much for returning. I am going to be posting again regularly as I can. I don't even want to make a promise that I can't keep about what days or any of that stuff. I just added these 2 new members to my family, my 2 pups, Ralph and Ivory, and I've been going through a lot in the past year, but I am past that now, and I'm ready to get back into my creativity. I wasn't sure if you guys would kind of want more of a separate in-depth video about where I've been, but the bottom line is, if you do, you can leave me a comment, but the bottom line is I'm back now. I will be posting. If you are new to my channel, you can go and watch some of my old content. You can kind of see my progression and catch up. We don't do anything fancy over here, but we do beautiful flips. So if you like that, please do not forget to subscribe to my channel, and thank you all so much for watching. I do like this top coat and I find it to be durable, but I do notice that when you apply it, you cannot go over the same area too many times because it does get kind of finicky. So any spots that I missed on my first pass, I just make sure to hit them on my second go around. I used a water bottle to store all of my leftover wash, and now I'm just putting some on a cloth and applying it to the pools that I ordered from Amazon. After 2 coats of the paint wash and 2 coats of primer were dry, I was able to go ahead and apply these pools. And just like that, this flip is done. Here are some final images. Let me know what you guys think in a comment down below the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you all in my next flip. If you have the time, please select another one of my videos to watch from the choices on your screen. Thank you so much for watching.